Hi guys, this video is going to show plyometric exercises that will benefit combat athletes. As shown in the previous clips of wrestling and judo, it is clear that combat athletes require high levels of power to be able to take their opponents down. What is plyometric training? Plyometric training is also known as jump training or plyos. It can involve movements such as jumps, hops, bounds, and/or skips. Plyometric training is governed by the stretch shortening cycle. Here we have an image showing the stretch shortening cycle. The stretch shortening cycle is split into three phases: the eccentric, amortization, and concentric phase. The eccentric phase is the lengthening phase of the muscles. The amortization phase is the phase between eccentric and concentric. Spending as little time here as possible will maximise the concentric phase and minimise energy loss. The final phase is the concentric phase. This is the rapid shortening of the muscles to allow the athlete to jump as high as possible. The first movement is a basic box jump. The athlete starts in an athletic stance, then the athlete begins the eccentric phase of the stretch shortening cycle by lowering down into a squat position. The athlete then minimises the time spent in the amortization phase to minimise energy loss. The athlete then jumps as high as possible onto the box utilising the concentric phase. The athlete then finishes stood fully upright on top of the box. The second movement is the single leg box jump. The motion of the jump is similar to the basic box jump. However, the athlete must be balanced on one leg before jumping, and landing on the box must be single-legged as well. Whilst performing this exercise, it is recommended to start with your weaker leg. The same amount of reps should be performed on each leg. As shown in this clip, it is clear that combat athletes require the ability to be able to perform powerful movements on a single leg. As the clip shows, the athlete performing a double leg takedown and pushing off his left leg to drive his opponent over. The third and final movement is a depth box jump. The athlete begins on top of a box that is smaller than the box they will be jumping on. The athlete steps off the box from the dominant leg. They land two-footed and try to minimise the ground contact time before jumping on the next box. The jump onto the next box should be performed as quickly and as powerfully as possible. The athlete must finish on the box stood fully upright. With all these exercises, it is important for the athlete to have an adequate strength base before undertaking any plyometric training. The use of plyometric training for combat athletes is essential, not only to improve power, but to also utilise the triple extension of the ankle, knees and hips. As the next clip shows, the athlete triple extending his leg whilst performing the takedown on his opponent. It is recommended that the work to rest ratio for plyometric training is 1:5 and all the way up to 1:10. For depth jumps, it is recommended to be on the higher end of the work to rest ratio, as the depth jump is a much more taxing plyometric exercise compared to the other two movements within this video. For example, if the athlete performs 15 seconds worth of depth jumps, the rest between sets should be 2.5 minutes. When applying plyometric training into a strength and conditioning program, the amount of training volume needs to be accounted for. This is done by the amount of ground contacts per session. It is recommended that novice adult athletes with minimal experience should only perform 80 to 100 ground contacts per session, whereas more experienced athletes can perform up to 120 to 140 ground contacts per session. Other guidelines suggest that trained athletes could have up to 400 ground contacts per session, depending on the intensity of the exercise. For example, if the athlete is performing a depth box jump, the ground contacts should be lower as the exercise is at a higher intensity. Whereas, compared to a basic box jump, which is a much lower intensity, so the amount of ground contacts could be higher.